I'll start again. Good evening and welcome to this Norfolk Select Board meeting on January 3rd, 2023. I got it right. And I'd like to start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And we start this evening by opening a public hearing for Verizon poll petition on Pine Street. And I need to read the public hearing notice. Here I go. I can do this one. You always do the big ones. Public hearing notice. The Select Board for the Town of Norfolk will conduct a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 166, Section 22 of the Massachusetts General Laws on a petition from Verizon New England Incorporated and Eversource Energy and Star Electric for joint pole location to grant petitioners joint or identical locations for and permission to erect and maintain poles, wires, and cables together with anchors, guys, and other such sustaining protecting fixtures as they may find necessary. Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan marked Plan Number 1A5L2UG dated April 21st, 2022, filed herewith along and across the following public way or ways of said town. Pine Street, place 1, jointly owned pole number T6 over E6A on the northeast side of Pine Street at a point approximately 177 feet southeasterly from the center line of Valley Street. Also, for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. Petitioners agree to reserve space for one cross arm at a suitable point upon each of said poles for the telephone, fire, and police signal wires belonging to the town and used by it for municipal purposes. This hearing will be conducted this evening on Tuesday, January 3rd, 2023 at 7 p.m. in Meeting Room 124, 1 Liberty Lane, Norfolk, Mass., as well as via Zoom online video conferencing remote access.
That was a wordful.
That was a mouthful.
So this hearing is for a joint poll with Verizon Eversource. This is to support a new poll, support a new development. Our DPW director has reviewed this proposal. There's a representative from Verizon here as well. Our DPW director, Mr. Crane, has provided a memo giving the board's approval with a certain stipulation, which is the location be no less than 10 feet away from the existing curb line. Our fire and police chief have reviewed this, and there are no concerns with that plan. I don't know if you want to have our DPW director or representative speak to you, but that's the purpose of the hearing.
Okay. Do you have anything that we need or should know?
Nothing beyond the memo. Just looking for enough access for snow removal, that's all.
Cool. And Verizon, is there anything we should know?
I think he said it all. I added to it perfectly, so there's nothing different than what I could say. So.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Do you have any questions, Kevin?
No questions on my end.
I have no questions either.
I don't believe there's a member of the public here in terms of Verizon. No?
I'm Mike Braben, it's 36 Pine Street, Cottage Car Wash. Now, my only reason for the meeting, I just wanted to make sure I understood what that pole was for and why it was being put there with the new construction across the street and so forth. I imagine the primary reason for that is to allow underground utilities up the street. Is that correct?
No, it's just, sorry, over here. You don't have to look over your shoulder. It's,
Can you, I'm
sir,
sorry,
why
can
don't
you
you
grab
come
the
to the pole?
microphone?
Sure.
Yep.
Thanks.
the primary purpose is to support 35 Pine Street, right across the street from you, that whole new development going in,
Right.
so that all the load going in it needs another pole to make it supported better,
Okay.
and it's gonna go right beside the driveway.
Are those underground utilities going up that road, street, or is that gonna be above ground?
I don't know specifically what's going on the property. It's going to just continue, the wiring you see there is going to continue. It's just going to be another pole in the middle because the load that will be necessary to go onto the property to support the line to keep
The
it
weight of
safe.
the cables and so
Yeah,
forth?
to keep it safe at a adequate height.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for your questions. Any other questions out there from the public?
No one online.
No one's online? Thank you.
So Thursday, I would say the board should probably move to close the hearing.
Alrighty.
I move that the board vote to close the public hearing for the Verizon Eversource poll petition on Pine Street.
Second, all those in favor, oh, are we in a public, no, we can do, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And then,
I move that the board vote to grant permission to Verizon New England Incorporated and Eversource to locate one jointly owned pole numbered T6.5 E6A on the northeast side of Pine Street at a point approximately 177 feet southeasterly from the center line of Valley Street and 10 feet back from the edge of the paved surface.
second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Blair.
Have a nice evening. Drive safely.
Take care.
So now we've beat Congress. Is that
We
correct?
did.
There we go. And so the next thing on our agenda is public comment. At this time, anybody from the public is welcome to share their feelings about the town, under 3 minutes. It looks like there's not much public out there. So I'm going to move on to number 2. Vote to approve the Norfolk Small Business Association's use of Town Hill for Discovery Day.
Thank you. So this is a request for September 9th, 2023, with a rain date of September 10th, 2023. This has sort of become an annual request. We're being proactive. This is for the Norfolk Small Business Association to utilize Town Hill. All of our departments so far, what we receive, have no issues. There is just one issue that we might have to revisit in the future because there are plans possibly for one-day alcohol licenses, and we haven't received any documentation for that just yet. We'll review that in the future. This is just for the event on that day.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, this is an amazing event to help expose some of the local small businesses to the community. I'm so glad that it's becoming an annual thing, and I think it was incredibly well received last time, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm all good.
I move that the board approve the use of Town Hill for Discovery Day on September 9th, 2023, with a rain date of September 10th, 2023.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Number 3, discussion of a plan to utilize the ARPA funds.
This has been coming, long-awaited plan. I know that the board had considered sort of a general, or had a general discussion about ARPA previously. I do just want to give a brief overview for anyone who has any interest in this. The ARPA plan is funds from the federal government. Norfolk has received about $3.5 million. 1.2 of it is directly to the town. And that's classified as revenue loss funds. That means that the town can utilize those funds in whatever manner that it wishes to. The remaining amount is $2.26 million, and that's coming from the county. Most of that will be for reimbursement purposes on specific buckets, whether it's broadband, sewer, water infrastructure, directly COVID-related expenses, et cetera. About $242,000 of that is classifies revenue loss as well. So that is something that we can use pretty broad based on whatever proposal that the board is interested in utilizing those ARPA funds for. So as part of this process, the finance director and myself, we met with all department heads. We talked about some of these requests. Ultimately, we had over $10 million of requests, and we have about $1.4 million that we have sort of broad latitude to utilize. So there were some tough decisions, obviously. We couldn't do everything, but I do want to give the caveat that some of these requests we did fund via the capital this year as part of our capital process. Some of our additional plans is to fund some of these other projects in the future with grant funds or capital as well. But our sort of justification for this recommendation is keeping in mind that we have to commit these funds by 2024 and we have to spend it by 2026. So we wanted to make sure that, one, it was used prudently, that we were able to utilize these funds because we want to maximize that, and also make sure that we were being innovative in doing something that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do with our existing financial resources. So I will probably bring that image up. So this is a bit, hopefully online is a little bit easier, but we will make sure that this is posted as well on our website. What we've done is provided a recommendation list that is separated out by green is our town utilization fund, so that's broad base. Yellow is county base, and that's primarily sort of sewer focused. I'll talk about the county first. There are 4 proposed projects for county utilization funds. Some of these were discussed previously, and the board did commit to some of these projects initially as well. There's MS4 compliance obligations. This was discussed. This was part of the budget for this fiscal year 23 budget. There are some other costs in future years as well. Ultimately, we're going to have to incorporate this into our operating budget, but the plan is to utilize ARPA to sort of get us there over time. And this was a proposal that was worked with Blair and Barry. Then there's the Seekonk Culvert and Water Main project. This is a very complex project. There's a lot of issues there. There's the gas main, there's conservation land, etc. This project is expecting to be about, and this is a projection, we're still going through this, there might be sort of grant funds and different things that we maybe utilize, but about $2.5 million. The proposal that we have is to spend about $960,000 in ARPA funds, and then maybe look at water retained earnings, etc., to fund the entire project. There's $50,000 for an unused capacity study with planning. This project is sort of trying to make sure we maximize the wastewater treatment plant. I'm happy to say that the governor did sign the Wastewater Act into enactment, so that will give the town a little bit more flexibility with that. And so this unused capacity study will make sure we're maximizing that flow there to the best of the town's capability. Also, currently we have an alliance with the Medicom Health Alliance. We get about $20,000 for 15 hours of work from a nurse there. We're working with the county to make sure that's an eligible expense on the county side. We believe that will be the case, so we're budgeting that using ARPA funds for till 2026, and then after that incorporating into our operating budget. So that's the county side. We expect to expend all of that amount of money. On this spreadsheet below, you'll see what is available and then what's spent as well as money. So we would be utilizing all of our county resources there. I will talk about the town direct funds unless you guys have a question just yet, or you want me to just keep flowing.
No, I'm good. I think you're correct in assuming that we could use the county distributed funding for the Medicom Health Alliance. I think I've heard of that same kind of usage from other municipalities, from the county advisory board. So I think you're right.
Is that the only item on here that will eventually roll over into the operating budget, or are there others?
The stormwater, the MS4 compliance obligations, that is sort of a new federal obligation that we have. That's something that will be incorporated into operating budget over time. I think we're going to have, what I would like to do is on our next meeting or a forthcoming meeting, or maybe as a budget item, I like for Barry and Blair to talk about that requirement a little bit more. That will definitely be something that will be incorporated into the operating budget moving forward. Yeah.
Just so we don't end up in 2026 with a huge hit.
And part of the plan is actually, so the allocation in fiscal year 23 was with the previous town administrator, and I think we're spending about $254,000 or so. The plan would be not to have that large figure throughout. It would be to gradually reduce it so we're not hit with the whole shebang when the commitment time is there. Mm-hmm. So that's the plan, is we don't want to just have it all hit us.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Excuse me. So now on the town side, I call this the revenue loss or revenue replacement fund. So this is broad-based. You can utilize this in a variety of manners. There's a project for the COA for the parking lot. This was a proposal that right now, a variety of department heads led by Karen Edwards, our COA director, they're doing a redesign of the parking lot to make it a little bit more accessible for our seniors, add more handicap parking. And so the town had a earmark of $40,000 in the previous fiscal year. There's an earmark of $25,000 in this the Senate's fiscal year budget. The plan would be to utilize $150,000 to move this project forward. We don't have a final number. We're in the design period of this, but we believe that $150,000 will help this project move forward. Maybe get some more earmarks or grant funding, et cetera. But this is this would help us move forward with that project. Some of these projects are projects that were already funded, so I'm going to skip over. There was a new six-wheeler. This was funded in a previous special town meeting for a DPW item. A new item is ADA sidewalk and roadway improvements. We're recommending $50,000 in that area. The town underwent an ADA feasibility, ADA study for town buildings, for roadways and sidewalks. After speaking with our DPW director, he thought that this was a prudent usage of our funds. We did not provide any capital funds in our budget for ADA improvements, with the plan that we were going to start this with ARPA money, because hopefully with an allocation there, we can also go after some grants to assist us there. But this is something long-term that we're going to have to look at funding in the capital. This is just to get us started in there. And so we did the same thing with facilities and doing ADA compliance for town or school buildings, another allocation of $50,000. So about $100,000 this year to start us off. Do a review, see what else we can get in terms of grant funding and how we incorporate capital in the future as well. The proposal for fiscal year 22 engine replacement, that was something that was funded previously. There was an issue with the engine, fire apparatus equipment, so that was agreed to earlier. There is this new proposal of $323,000 to replace engine 2. Now this, we're going to utilize a combination of funds for this proposal. This apparatus is about $800,000, and so what we've done is the town meeting approved a utilization of capital funds of $150,000. We're going to look at ambulance receipt funds of $323,000, and then ARPA is $323,000. That gives us flexibility, hopefully, to utilize some more ARPA money in other projects, but it will allow us to get a new engine. Library, this was another project that had already been agreed to. This is sort of technology equipment that I think was supposed to be under CARES, but it wasn't put forward, so utilizing ARPA funds for. IT is similar, is utilizing ARPA funds to pay for the website. These are things that have already been expended. Technology update, this was for servers, peripheral equipments, desktops, already agreed to. A new proposal is to outfit room 120 to make it hybrid accessible as well. The town has really been sort of, I believe, a leader and worked very well with NCTV to make as many meetings hybrid so people can participate remotely. Our plan is to sort of outfit room 120 to make it sure that we could have a similar meeting as we have in this room. So we're working with NCTV and our facilities director to outfit that room. There'll be some permanent equipment there, so that will foreseeably, forever, be able to be utilized as a hybrid meeting space moving forward. Another new proposal is $75,000 for a feasibility study that the school is currently undergoing. They had allocated $225,000 for the feasibility study. That feasibility study has been about $260,000. So this is some additional funds to make sure that we, that we're able to conduct that feasibility study. I think it might be prudent to have Ingrid and that team over there come talk about that, along with our facilities director, to talk about where we're at in the feasibility study phase. Police, this was for microwave towers and radios. This was previously agreed to and already expended. A new proposal is the digitization of documents for planning. This is something that was on our capital request. This is sort of a request that Rich, our planning director, said was sort of time sensitive. We weren't able to incorporate it into our capital for this year, so we wanted to allocate ARPA funds for this. In the future, this is something that we would like to go after grant funds for. We attended a ceremony at the State House where there are grant funds for further digitization. So building, we've already expended funds to do digitization. We'll probably look at doing that as well, but continuing with planning. We felt like this was prudent for this time period, but we'll try to go after grant funds in the future for this. And then, so we have sort of town administration sort of finance proposals. The first initial proposal is a grant writer / procurement specialist. This is a position, this would be a new position, it'd be a temporary position. Thinking about doing this for 3 years if the board so deems it prudent. The position, one thing that I've realized since I've come to the town is the need for us to get a little bit stronger and provide more support in procurement. We've got a lot of projects going on. We've got, the school project, we have the fire station project, we have a lot of bids out there, different equipment. And so this might be an opportunity to sort of create a hybrid position where you have a grant writer with some procurement skills as well, where the town has been very successful this past month in getting grant funds, but I think we could be even better. There is a bandwidth thing there. Going after these grants are time intensive. They require a bit of work, a follow-up. I think for the bang for the buck, from what I've seen, having a grant writer in place will provide more funds than what that position would cost us. And the fact that it is a temporary position, it will allow us to review and see if this is something that is working for the town. So that's one proposal. Another proposal is to do a short-term agreement with Guilfoyle Public Relations. That's our PR firm that I've discussed with. This would hopefully allow us to really reach the community a little bit better, get our message out across a bit better, coordinate our messaging, and really part of our overall strategy of community engagement. We want to make sure our messaging is getting out to our community members. Kate and Amanda in our office are really looking at different ways to improve our social media and community engagement. So this is something that I think would be very helpful. Small dollars there, and for communities that have utilized the service, they think it's been wonderful. Our police department utilizes them right now, and our schools do as well, and they've all said great things about the services they provide. And I work with them in Brookline as well. Proposal would be, we did secure grant funding for ClearGov, the budget software for this fiscal year, so that's all fully covered, and a piece of it will cover the following year. But in case we decide moving forward that ClearGov is something that we might want, thinking about having ARPA fund a portion of it the following year as well, that will give us some time, one, to get some feedback, some data analytics and performance sort of measurement to see, hey, is this really worth the bang for a buck? I think, having done a transition to new software, sometimes that first year you don't get the sort of the response that you expect, but it's after the second or third year that's when you see more people get engaged once they know about the product. So I think it might be prudent we've got the grant funding for this year, utilize ARPA for another year, and then we can do a review of that. Discussed previously but never approved by the board. In the fiscal year 23 budget, when it was developed, it didn't account for an extra week. So it's about 0.2 added. So there is a budget shortfall. I guess the intent was to have ARPA utilize that, but I did want to put this on for the board. That's about $27,000.
Can you tell, what do you mean by an extra week?
Yeah, so when the fiscal year 23 budget was being developed, as a budget person, you use a calculation of, let's say, 52.2. When the budget was developed, it was 52 weeks. So that 0.2 wasn't accounted for, and that is payroll expenses that should be, that needs to be paid. Yeah. So rather than going to the reserve fund or anything like that, free cash, I believe it was the previous town administrator and our finance director's understanding to utilize ARPA to cover that. So I did want to make sure the board knew about that and approved that as well.
Cool.
You also note, based on the recommendation here, there's about $180,000 available in the sort of revenue loss category. And the reason why is I've noticed here there are some expenses that you do not account for. And typically you would go to a reserve fund or something like that. We have a small reserve fund that allows for that. But I've noticed we've had quite a few different apparatuses that have failed. I believe that it might be prudent to have a small contingency of $180,000 to allow us to be flexible depending on what may arise. My intent, and I know the board's intent, is to utilize every single penny possible and put it to good use. But rather than allocating everything, I think giving that little bit of a sort of, I say, contingency to allow us to be flexible would be prudent. It also allow us to see, if there's other projects that may emerge. Some departments weren't ready to give a project. I think this would give us some flexibility there. Rather than committing everything at the moment, we do have still one more year before we have to commit. I think it might be sensible to think about that. So that's a recommendation list. I'm sure we have questions or thoughts. My other intent is, I know that this is just a discussion item for tonight. Love feedback from the community, feedback from the board as well. But, if there's anything in particular with different projects wanting more information, would love to have the department heads come here and talk to you about that as well, if that's something you're interested in. But
Cool.
for now.
And just thinking about, I'm going to ask, thinking about the timeline of approval, what is our goal for today? We're talking about the initial suggestions, and then so what do you see as a timeline, just for people who are watching,
Yeah.
to have a sense of?
So the next board meeting is in 2 weeks. We have a lot going on that next 2 weeks, so I kind of defer to the board. But I think the initial thought was to have some time to dwell upon this, to think it through. If there's other suggestions or any alterations, we'll definitely do that. Or if we have feedback from the community, definitely to receive that. But in 2 weeks for the board to consider approval of this proposal would be something that I was intending, but this is ultimately the board's recommendation, so whatever you guys are comfortable with, we can do.
Awesome. I would want to at least have people have a chance to share public comments. So for people watching, all four of you, and people who watch it later on Zoom, please let us know your thoughts on this process, or if you have, you can email or join us for public comment next time. Do you have questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The first one is related to the grant writer position.
Yes.
A few weeks back, we had a meeting with Congressman Auchincloss where we talked about some of the impediments to development and growth in the communities with the planners from each of the other towns in the district. And I think everybody pretty much said the bandwidth of a grant writer was one of the biggest impediments they had to being able to access funding at the state level. Are we able to share this position with other communities in some kind of resource program or something of that nature?
Absolutely. I put it in my notes, and this was something that I was going to reach out to sort of our fellow town administrators. Typically, it's something, it makes sense to see if someone else is interested in, to share the benefits, make it a split position, maybe half here or half in another community. That's something that I'm definitely interested in. This would be something, if the board was interested in doing, that I think we would want to reach out, have some engagement with some other communities as well to see what might work. Because it might not necessarily be a full-time position here in Norfolk. Maybe it's a 20-hour work week, who knows? But that's definitely something that would make sense.
Awesome. And may I piggyback on that one too? The grant writer position, is that something that could also maybe piggyback a little bit with the schools and support the schools?
Yes, I had a conversation with Ingrid as well. So I think with this position is sort of, if the board's interested, let's partner with our colleagues and figure out what makes sense. Ingrid had mentioned there might be some interest in utilizing that as well. It is a little bit more difficult sometimes from her explanation because it's so nuanced there for some of the grants there, but more than willing to have that conversation. We have started speaking about that, just like I would speak with some of our other communities.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead. I'll pass it back.
Thank you. For ClearGov, one of the big selling points of ClearGov for us was the ability to be able to highlight upcoming capital projects and identify any tax increases to individuals in town. They're able to go and put in their address and be able to identify specifically for their home how much a project would impact them. Is this functionality something that we could have in place ahead of the fire station vote? Because I think that would probably be the next big thing we'd want to be able to highlight with that type of platform.
So this would be something that Todd is sort of leading the rollout of this. And I have done a rollout before. I worked with ClearGov before. I've worked with OpenGov. Sometimes these get a little tricky. We are trying to move pretty quickly. I don't know if I can say that this will be ready in time for that. We're trying to make sure the interactive portion of ClearGov is ready to go. We had some issues sort of rolling in our previous budgets, which are really important data to have. But if we're able to, we more than definitely would. And we would also put it in the front page of our website. I think we need to do a better job sort of highlighting it and also getting it out on our social media and advice to let people know that we have that out there. We're working on it.
Okay, thank you. And my last one is just to note that it wasn't lost on me that it only took one meeting at the advisory board for you to develop your own fund, so you don't have to go back in front of them again. So just wanted to make sure that we called out that you found a way around that. Well done.
Enjoy partnering with our friends on the advisory committee.
Excellent. And I wanted to make a comment about the 180,000. I think that's a really good call, and just to kind of have that in your back pocket. And it's not losing the money. It's just waiting to see where we're at in a little bit further down the road. So I think that's a really good call. And then more of a curiosity thing that we had, the ADA report came to us quite a little while ago. Like, that isn't a recent report. And if I remember, the report had been kind of triaged into higher priority or lower priority, and so we haven't done any work on the ADA.
Our DPW director and our facility directors have sort of gone through that report. They've started to create a list of some high priority projects. I think without an allocation of funds, there isn't much you can do there.
Right.
But that's why we wanted to utilize sort of some seed funds initially, because that also allows us to go after grant funds. And that's really been a priority for our departments. They've been fantastic in trying to utilize and maximize funds. So at least with this allotment, we can see what we're able to do and then sort of develop into an overall plan in terms of ADA compliance.
And so that's what you meant by doing a review of what we already know and how we're going to pay for it and in what sequence we're going to tackle those projects.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. And excited to see NCTV used in more than one place. I think that's a real jewel of the town, and so.
They've been great partners. Even when we had the NCTV come over and talk about the work that they've done, some of the hybrid work that they did previously, they did with their own budget. So I think this is a great partnership and collaboration that hopefully will benefit everyone here.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, one other question. As we continue to have more and more discussions related to the fire station and helping to inform the community about some of the background and the proposal as it stands today, one of the questions that we keep hearing about is, this magical ARPA money, how come we can't dedicate that to the development of the fire station? And I think the answer is that it doesn't necessarily fit into one of those 4 buckets that's been outlined. However, public health is a pretty vague one that's used. And obviously, the fire station plays a big part in public health. Do you think that there's an avenue there to be able to leverage some of these funds towards the fire station in any way, shape, or form? I can say from my experience, I haven't seen anybody use the ARPA funds for a building project up until this point, but would love to get your insight.
No, that's a great question. I think theoretically you probably could, but I think with a lot of municipalities and finance people, I do not know anyone who's utilized it on a building. One of the initial, and the guidance on ARPA has changed numerous times, as you both are very much aware. Initially, what they had mentioned was a huge no-no, was not to utilize this to lower tax bills or anything like that. So I don't think any of my colleagues in the profession have utilized it on a building. I think there's some ways probably to navigate that, but I haven't seen it, and I don't necessarily know that that's your best bang for your buck either. What ARPA is really thought about this. This truly has been, this amount of funds has never been utilized in municipalities before, and this amount of funds. So a lot of us have really focused on utilizing this in a manner that we wouldn't be able to utilize it otherwise as well. So I haven't seen much. I haven't seen much here in Massachusetts, nor have I seen it in other communities as well.
Perfect, thank
Hopefully that
you.
answered your question. Yeah.
Yep. That's it.
I don't have any other questions. So for the people out there watching, please tell us what you think. We want to hear from you. And
And I do want to thank everyone who sort of engaged with this process. I said there were some great ideas. Unfortunately, we weren't able to fund everything, but we're thinking about different ways that we do this moving forward. So,
excellent. Thank you.
welcome.
Number 4, update on housing choice compliance.
So on Zoom, we have Rich and we have Susan. I know we had sort of a brief conversation about housing choice. Our intent is really to understand this. We don't have a lot of, really at the starting point. We did want to have, Susan and have Rich come on again, and we just talk about housing choice, just give a broad overview. We'll go from there.
You're muted.
There we go, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as Justin mentioned, I just wanted to come in and have a brief interim update where we are in terms of the housing choice that was passed the legislation. For those, just a quick recap. It was signed into law in January of 21, which essentially requires MBTA communities to have one district of high-density multifamily housing within a half-mile radius of commuter rail, public transportation center. In our case, as it applies to us, is the commuter rail station in town center. The Department of Housing Community Development, in conjunction with MBTA, what is it? I get tripped up on an acronym. How about that? It's probably, it doesn't happen too often. Anyway, so in conjunction with MBTA, they put out some guidance documents in 21, and then this past August, they issued their final guidance documents, and there was another amendment in October of this past year into how to comply with the new statute as it was put forth. We applied for and received some technical assistance money from Massachusetts Housing Partnership. Just prior to the holiday, we had a phone conversation, Susan and myself, and then we briefed Justin later on with Jeff Davis from Horsley and Witten about what we're intend to do at this point. And what we're intending to do at this point is really to go through an assessment process to evaluate the requirements of the new statute and how it relates to the town of Norfolk in terms of its zoning bylaws. And then as part of that same process, look at potential various options, how the town might be able to comply with it if the town chose to do that. Again, it is a choice of the town. And that this would be run over the next 6 months between January through June. And then after and through that process, there will be communications with the Affordable Housing Trust, the Planning Board. We will certainly come back to the Select Board. But in terms of this work, it would be large part of it would be at the staff level, but then there will be work with the boards to go over some of the assessment and potential options, but no formal action will be taken in terms of moving forward at this point. It's really more information gathering, and that would be, the intent would be this would be an agenda item of the Planning Board or the Affordable Housing Trust or even the Select Board to talk about those, but there is not a plan of action to actually go forward and try to implement anything at this point. It's really an assessment and look at options that the town potentially could have and whether to choose to move forward or not. I'll pause right now for any questions you might have.
Rich, can I just add one thing to that as well? Obviously
Sure.
The Select Board, the Planning Board, and Affordable Housing Trust, I think this is more staff level at initially as we're learning this process, but as this process grows and as we get more information, ultimately town meeting and residents will decide whether we move forward with housing choice like every other municipality. So there will be community engagement. There is going to be an important part of this process. I think initially we're all trying to learn a little bit more and have some more information here because the guidance has shifted quite a little bit. I think Rich and Susan can attest. So ultimately, a lot of community engagement and residents will have the final voice in what happens with housing choice when we get to that point, way in the future.
Correct.
And that would be in the form of zoning bylaw changes being brought forward to town meeting, which would then have to be, talked about at the planning board level and potentially talked about at the select board level, but before even being brought forward. So it does have to go through a number of different milestones or thresholds before we even get to that point.
Right.
Which
Absolutely.
obviously we haven't even started any of that yet, right?
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
I don't think there's any questions. One thing that I think was important to say here too is with housing choice, as we've said, there's a little bit of unknown. There's been this figure of 750 units that is required. Rich, I don't know, can you just briefly talk about that? That is not a figure that is hard in the sand. There's a lot of components to that. And what I do want to emphasize for people that are listening, understand there's a lot that we don't know, and there's nothing concrete just yet. So Rich, do you just want to say quickly a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And just the way you said it is perfect lead into this because it's not a requirement, it's a capacity analysis. So you do a mathematical formula, which in our case is, I probably talked about this briefly last time, is 750 units from a mathematical. So 50 acres times 50 acres times 15 units per acre. Now remember, if you recall, last time I was there's a caveat, there's a floor. So if you do the rough math, it's not 750, but they put a floor in of 750. But that's a theoretical mathematical formula. What you have to remember, we want to kind of carry this message all the time, is you have to have septic to be able to have a dwelling unit. That's going to take up space. There are going to be setback requirements that you have to build dwelling units. So when you get to what it might actually be, I'm sure we're going to find it significantly less because we don't have sewer like many other MBTA communities that would be grappling with this requirement. So when you're relying on septic, there are limitations in how much you can put on a piece of property in terms of septic before you start to move it up to a very costly wastewater treatment plant. So in our case, it's a big number, theoretical, but the actual, I think, will be, I probably would take this bet, honestly, to tell you, we would never get to 750 because I don't think it's feasible, quite honestly.
Rich, do you remember what the build-out number was when we were at full build-out for the B1 when we went through with those zoning changes in the spring? Wasn't that full build-out of all the changes we made somewhere in the 500 in terms of units?
Yeah, I think it was in the 500.
So even with that huge slate of changes that we brought forward for 41 acres, I believe was the final count for the area, we were still at a full build-out, everything being developed to the capacity that it could be developed to. Only at 500 units. So the prospect of us getting to 750, like Rich said, is just not within reality.
If I can, I think it's important for the people that are listening tonight or that may be watching this at a later date, is to really emphasize that this is going to come down to the voters at town meeting, as Kevin indicated, whether that's through zoning bylaw changes. So it's not something that can be done or can happen without going before a town meeting vote. I think that's really important for the public to know, and to reiterate that we are definitely in the assessment stage of this and getting the technical assistance that's available to us. But again, it's something that will be brought to the residents of Norfolk, and ultimately the housing choice will be their choice.
Absolutely.
I appreciate having it come up now so people have a chance to start to chew on it and say, this is interesting and I want to pay attention, and so thank you. Thank you.
And I think the goal and the intent is, as this process develops over time, we'll have, Rich, Susan intermittently come in and obviously put it on the agenda moving forward as well. But wanted to have this brief update.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich, Susan.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And so then moving on, town administrator updates, number 5.
So a couple of updates. One, I do want to let everyone know that unfortunately a pipe burst in the library last week, unfortunately. And so the library has been closed because the library is trying to provide services. They are updating pretty frequently on their Facebook page, so as people want to get understanding of when the library will reopen, the Facebook page would be a great resource. They are providing services, we said, trying at best. At most till tomorrow, they will be closed as well tomorrow. So I just want to let people know that that's the reason why the library is closed. Want to just give a general reminder that, this, on January 11th, we have a special town meeting for the fire station project. We did have bids close last week. The fire station building committee is going to be reviewing those bids tomorrow, and we'll be presenting that figure at special town meeting on January 11th. And then ultimately, there's a debt exclusion as well as a select board vacancies on the ballot for September 28th. There is early voting and mail-in voting. You can request a mail-in ballot on our website through the town clerk's office as well. So just want to give those quick updates there.
Thank you. Any questions?
No. Good, thank you.
And then warrants. So we have warrants. Do you want to?
I move that the board approve 6 warrants for the period of December 13th, 2022 through December 30th, 2022, as printed on the agenda for this meeting.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Item number 7, there's no action there. We don't have any minutes to review at the moment.
Very good.
That seems to be, I think we've more than outdone ourselves compared to the Congress. I'll take a final motion.
I move to adjourn this meeting of the Norfolk Select Board.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Andrew.